Hi, Dan here from Attack Magazine, and in this Synth Secrets, we're going to be recreating the high-energy rave-focused bassline from Effy's Not Yours using FabFilter Twin 3. Since her first release back in 2020, Effy has been putting out single after single with impressive consistency. In that short space of time, she's garnered the respect of some heavyweight tastemakers. Last year saw the release of one of her standout tracks, Not Yours, on Ladbroke Grove-based label LG 105. This warehouse-ready behemoth of a tune garnered mainstream love when it was picked to feature on the soundtrack of FIFA 23. In this Synth Secrets, we're going to be recreating the main synth riff that gives this track its driving energy using FabFilter Twin 3. If you want to follow along, you can download the project file by following the link in the description. Here's what we'll be making today. And here it is, with more elements for context. First, we'll program in our MIDI pattern. The bassline is a relatively simple pattern that repeats every bar. We've built it out to make a 4-bar loop. If you look closely at the MIDI, you'll notice a variation in velocity, note length and timing. We played the pattern in with a MIDI keyboard, which lends itself nicely to the old school analog feel of the original track. However, you can program the notes with a mouse and add some variation manually. With the MIDI programmed, load FabFilter Twin 3 on the MIDI channel and select the clean preset so you have a blank slate on which to build your patch. Twin 3 allows up to 4 oscillators per patch. For this sound we'll only need 3. For a soft but slightly harmonic lower end, load a square wave oscillator. Set the oscillator tuning to -1 octaves. Next, create 2 identical sawtooth oscillators pitched to 0 octaves. Detune one of the sawtooth oscillators up by around 0.1 semitones and the other down by the same amount. This will cause them to go out of phase, creating the feel of a retro analog synth. Here's what that should sound like. Now it's time to dial in our filters. As their name suggests, FabFilter are renowned for their gorgeous filter models. Twin 3 allows you to use up to 4 of these filters in either parallel, serial or per oscillator configuration. For our purposes today, we'll be using the filters in a serial configuration. Set filter 1 to a low-pass filter with a peak of 0.56 and a cutoff frequency of 113.56 Hz. Select the hollow filter type and a slope of 24 decibels per octave. For filter 2, choose a clean high-pass filter with a slope of 12 decibels per octave, a cutoff frequency of 53.6 Hz and a peak of 0.34. Filter 3 is a bell filter with a cutoff of 75.5 Hz, a peak of -0.855, a wide Q, and set to hollow mode. Finally, set filter 4 to a classic bell band with a cutoff of 1541 Hz, a peak of -0.23 and a wide Q. Your pattern should now sound like this. We only need to make minimal amp envelope adjustments for this patch. Set the attack to 0.9 milliseconds and the attack slope to -1. Set the release to 46.5 milliseconds. Now that we have a longer release, you'll notice that the notes start to bleed into one another. We don't want this. Set the synth to monophonic mode by setting the number of voices to 1 in the poly section right at the bottom of Twin 3's UI. Here's how the riff sounds now. We need to beef the sound up a bit with Twin 3's effects section. Set drive to around 7% and make sure its routing is set to pre-effects, aka before the compressor we're about to use. Now, set compress to 52% with auto gain activated, a threshold of around -14 decibels, an instant attack, and a release of 30 milliseconds. This will tame the transients in the final sound. Now for the most important step. Modulation is the source of movement and flavour in this synth patch. First up, and most importantly, the low pass filter cutoff has to be modulated using an envelope to open up on every note. Click the plus button and choose New Envelope Generator from the drop-down menu. Assign the envelope to modulate filter 1's cutoff by clicking and dragging from the blue circle in the top left of the envelope window onto the filter node. Set the envelope attack to 4.5 milliseconds, the attack slope to -0.3, decay to 250 milliseconds, sustain to -2 decibels, hold to 770 milliseconds, and release to 1 millisecond. Set the modulation amount so that the filter movement peaks at around 1500 Hz. For extra movement, route the same filter to the drive amount so that the drive dial peaks at around 45 to 50%. To stop the kick drum in our track clashing with the bass sound, we need to sidechain the sub-oscillator in our patch. We can do this within Twin3 using an envelope follower. Create a new modulation source and select New Envelope Follower from the menu. In the small interface of Twin3 in the Ableton instrument and effect chain, set the sidechain source of Twin3 to your kick channel. This creates an envelope in Twin3 that perfectly follows the kick drum in your track. Route the envelope follower to duck the volume of the square wave bass oscillator by a couple of decibels every time the kick hits. With the modulation applied, the synth part is really starting to come alive. Finally, it's time to polish our sound with just a touch of external processing. We'll be using a mixture of FabFilter's effects as well as Ableton's stock plugins. Starting with Saturn II, create a band from 520 Hz to 2400 Hz. Apply some warm tape saturation and boost the band by 3.5 decibels. Additionally, add warm tape saturation to the very top band and max out the drive. For extra all-round saturation, load Ableton's Saturator, apply 19 decibels of soft sine drive and roll off the output and dry wet mix. If you don't have Saturn II, you can just use Saturator on its own. Finally, use EQ8 or FabFilter Pro Q3 to boost at around 610 Hz by 8 decibels and set a high-pass filter at 30 Hz. Here's the final synth part on its own. And here it is with drums for context. Thanks a lot for watching. If you want to learn more about how to recreate classic synth sounds using FabFilter Twin3, then be sure to check out our Synth Secret video on James Holden and Nathan Thake's The Sky Was Pink. If you learned something from this video, be sure to share with your mates and don't forget to like and subscribe.